Hello everyone and welcome to the second in our series of webinars supporting teachers using FlyHigh in the third cycle of English Studies. Today's topic is, as you can see on the screen, going to be all about grammar and how to take that topic of grammar, which sometimes strikes fear, into the heart of students and teachers, and to show how it can be fun and engaging and something the students will grow to look forward to. Fun with grammar, yes, it definitely is possible. So let's just think about students' reactions to grammar. If you say the word grammar to students, they will often think along the lines of tests. It's very often the basis for the tests that we give our students, and they tend to associate it with this. Wrong or right answers, marks awarded or taken away. That it's difficult, the myth has grown up around English grammar that it's difficult, whereas we know that if it's presented and practiced in the right way, it's very easy to take on board and to get proficient at. What is it for, students think? Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to make positives, negatives, and affirmatives into questions? So it's sometimes difficult for students to see why they need this, but we can put it into such a context that they will see that easily, and we'll show how later. And of course, boring is another word which students sometimes associate with it, because the most typical way to practice grammar is sitting down, looking at the page and filling in gaps or completing sentences and using only this tunnel vision towards the page on the desk. But that's only one possible aspect of grammar practice, as you know, and we'll show some ways to really liven your grammar practice as we go through this webinar. So we can help students take on a different mindset, a different approach, a different attitude to grammar, and we can help them think every time they hear the word grammar or see it on the page that this is going to be fun, it's going to be enjoyable, it's useful for them, and it's going to be cool and something they can really get involved with and get some enjoyment out of. Fun and enjoyment, not always the same thing. Fun to me tends to indicate the sort of things where they're going to be smiling and laughing and moving and having a good time. Enjoyable can just be being involved and being engaged and feeling you've learned something. A lesson can be fully enjoyable without necessarily being fun, and they're both very positive ways to approach a lesson. Anyway, we'll cover all of that as we go through, looking at different aspects and grammar and how to practice it. So what is it good for? Grammar, what is it good for? Students might be asking themselves. Well, of course, we know that if the students have a good basis in grammar, they'll be much more confident about producing language in written form or in spoken form. They'll have that inbuilt knowledge that what they're going to come out with is actually comprehensible, correct, and will have the effect they want. It makes their production so much clearer. They'll be able to express ideas that they wouldn't otherwise be able to, and it gives them more of a variety of expression if they have the structures they need to put across the ideas they want to. Rather than, for example, someone who works in a shop saying to a customer, "You see, you like, you tell me, you buy, okay?" Then that person with some grammar can say, if you see something you like, then please tell me, we can make a deal and then you can buy it if you like. Extending this variety, making it more communicative, more friendly, more full, more complete production. But of course, on the downside, grammar, if we don't have enough of it, it can really hold back communication. This is the main thrust of it. It's not just something which is used for getting verb tenses right and filling in gaps. It really is at the basis of successful communication. It can be repetitive and unmotivating. If we only stick to the written exercises on the page, then that's not going to be the greatest motivator for our students. So we need to move beyond that. And of course, it's all too often, as we mentioned, seen as something that is either right or wrong and is over-assessed, is the basis for most tests they have, and where they seem to perceive that they lose most marks in their tests. The grammar can really bring them down. So we need to build up their confidence, get them to enjoy it, develop this positive attitude, and their competencies will go along with that. Just before we move on, I mean, is there really a place for written exercises? Exercises on the page, we all know the type of thing. Use the verb in brackets, put it in the correct tense, decide the correct preposition, change this from an affirmative into a negative. And I say absolutely, yes, this is an important stage for all students, especially those who really benefit from thinking time, who are not spontaneous and don't like to throw out the first thing that comes into their head. The extrovert students will enjoy taking a risk and throwing out an answer. The introvert students especially will need that thinking time to be able to think things through, to have time for reflection, to think about what went right, what went wrong, to benefit from the correction from their teacher, correction from their peers and their partners in their class, and remove any doubt so that they're fully confident, therefore, to move on and use it in production. Exactly what that girl in the picture is doing there. She's used her thinking time. She was reflecting on what she's learned. She's thinking about the correction. Correction is really where valuable learning takes place. And once she's gone through that and removed her doubts, then she'll be ready to move on. Written exercises wherever possible. Try to choose the ones which you think are going to have some meaning for the students, that they're related to characters in the book or the students' personal situations, that they're really going to be conveying some sort of meaning, that there's a context behind them. It's all very well filling in tables of irregular verb forms, but it's much better if those verb forms are in contextualized utterances or sentences on the page. And we should remember that written exercises, useful though they are only really a stepping stone towards interaction and production. Using that language in a communicative situation, getting it to actually do something for you and fulfill a real purpose, to communicate with your peers, your partner, your teacher, whoever you need to talk to or write to at that time. The written exercise is just one step along the road to using that grammar for real communication. And so let's take a look at some of the ways that we can use the Fly High series, the materials in it, and some other ideas to liven up the grammar. We're going to be looking at this point only at grammar practice activities. Grammar presentation is a whole other webinar. All the things you need to bear in mind to make it clear, to make it accessible, to make it economical, to make it generative. All those things about presentation obviously are extremely important as well, and care needs to be taken to make it quick and clear and productive. And now we're onto the practice stage, and we're going to look at different ways we can liven the grammar. Now, hip-hop grammar is a great way at the junction between presentation and practice to really identify and consolidate the rules about the grammar point you're studying. Let's have a quick look at a grammar hip-hop section on the online materials in Aula Digital from Leia Educação. In the section for the Fly High book, in Unit 1, we have a hip-hop grammar for the present simple rules. Hip-hop grammar, for those of you who are unaware of it or unfamiliar with it at the moment, uses well-known hip-hop tunes and songs that the students are going to recognize and know and like, and substitutes those lyrics with information about the grammar. So students can really have an opportunity to focus on the grammar, absorb it, notice it, remember it, get it fixed in their heads, and really help them take away something solid from their analysis of the grammar. Let's just listen to an example, and then we can see how we can use it in class, or one of the ways we can use it in class. Yeah. Present simple, about habits and routines, don't forget it. Put the S in the third person, he, she, and it. Present, do you know it? Present simple, it's to
talk about facts, don't forget it, 'cause I like it, and you like it, but you like this.
Yeah. So there we go. That is hip hop grammar and the present simple and the rules. Now, in the book, of course, on the page for the grammar presentation, you will have the lyrics for the hip hop grammar, so students can read this on the page. You can project it on your interactive whiteboard, and you can have the lyrics up there. There's the karaoke version online, or you can use just the music from the online version and have the students watch and look at the lyrics on the board. Now, there's a karaoke version. As I said, the students can sing or rap along with each hip-hop grammar, but sometimes that's a little bit complicated. You don't want to spend too much time on this. If you're practicing a song the students need to be word perfect at, then you do lots of activities to get them more confident and ready to listen and sing along and produce and be able to keep up. But this is a quick way to get information into their heads. We don't want to spend too long on it. So what I would suggest is doing something where rather than rap along or sing along with the whole version, students are just joining in on some of the key words. This, of course, happens in hip-hop songs, in hip-hop music. I remember from my youth where one person in the song usually would be rapping along and the other people in his hip-hop combo would be joining in on the key words. And you get a sort of a chorus effect on the key words. So what you can do is choose the keywords, project the lyrics on the board, circle the words that you want the students to join in on, and then go back and play the music again, and the students can listen, and rather than having to try and keep up and rap along with everything, they can just join in on the keywords. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to start the music again and see how I can do.
Present, do you know it? Present
Simple, habits, routines, S,
the third person, he, she, and
it,
present, do you know it? Present
simple,
is to talk about
facts,
don't forget it, 'cause I
like
it, and you
like it,
but you
likes it. Yeah. There we go. That's within the student's productive range. They don't need to join in with everything, but they are paying very close attention to the lyrics because they need to follow and know when they need to join in, and where they're joining in are really the key elements of the lyrics, which will help them remember habits, routines, S, it, simple, facts, likes. And they get this intense focus on the grammar, on the rules, in a sort of way that they're going to want to listen and join in. It's going to get stuck in their head and go round and round for the rest of the day, and really be a great way to back up the essential information about the hip hop, about the grammar, using hip hop. So there we go, hip hop grammar, lots of ways to use it. That's one way you can use it in class, which is within the students' productive abilities, and they can join in and really enjoy it at the same time as learning. Now, moving on, they're ready for interaction. They've got the rules. They've done some basic control exercises. They've had a little time of thinking time and reflection. It's time to get onto some real interaction. As you're doing your interactive exercises in class, of course, this is where grammar really becomes meaningful. This is an essential stage so that students realize why they're studying these verb forms and negatives and auxiliaries and prepositions and whatever it might be, because they can use it to do meaningful and interactive stuff. Exchanging information, learning about each other, making it personalized, sharing things about themselves with their partners and friends, varying the focus, not just looking down at your book or up at the board, but also looking at each other, other people in your group. Moving your focus around is a great way also to keep people focused and concentrating on what they're doing. If you're always looking in the same direction, just down, up, you get tired. Get the students looking sideways, around, to other people, across the classroom, and interacting and sharing information. You'll get them concentrating more. There's a tangible outcome. We can see that what we just did with this grammar actually had some real result. We learned something, we know something, we can share something, we can report back about what we learned about our partners using the grammar that's on the page and now in our heads. And so one way to do this is with a mingle. We'll be looking at a mingling exercise in a moment, and we'll be looking at a swapping exercise. Two that I love to use in my classes. They always get students enthusiastic and produce a lot of language in a very controlled way, but with all the above factors. You're exchanging some sort of information, you're giving a personalized view of the language, you're varying your focus and looking around you, and there's some sort of tangible outcome at the end that you can say you produced something meaningful with that grammar. So a mingling. The classic is find someone who. We'll look at a couple of variations in a moment, but find someone who is an exercise that I learned to use in the classroom 34 years ago. When I was training to be a teacher in International House in London in 1987, I learned about the exercise Find Someone Who, where students will have a series of questions or things to find out about the people in their classroom. And to do this, they need to either get up and wander around their classroom and ask anyone they like, or if you want to keep it more static, more controlled and calmer, then they work in groups and they find out about the people in their group and they try to find someone who matches the information they need. So they might have questions like, find someone who lives in a semi-detached house. Find someone who goes to school by bus. If we're talking about present simple and routine, of course, you can use this for pretty much any structure or grammar area. It could be in the past, it could be a future and going to, about plans, it could be a present perfect. We've got present perfect in the 8th year, hallelujah. So have you ever is a classic find someone who. Just ask as many people as you can. But the idea is that they have questions like this, where they need to find information. Find someone who lives in a semi-detached house. You need to elicit, of course, the question they need to ask. Elicit it from the class. Do you live in a semi-detached house? Or maybe if you want to make it broader, where do you live or what kind of house do you live in? But the simple version is, do you live in a semi-detached house? Yes, I do. No, I don't. And as soon as they hear someone answer, yes, I do, they make a note of their name on the page and they move on and they try to find a name that matches every question on the page. You can put as many as you like. I would not normally put more than about 6 or 8 because it would take them a long time to get everything. But the great thing about an exercise like this, where they're mingling and asking or sitting even in their groups and talking across to different people and exchanging information, is that this is really a drill. It's a grammar drill where they're asking and using the same structure over and over again. Yes/no questions or question word questions and possibly yes/no answers. They're practicing different forms, the affirmative, the negative, the interrogative, the way that you want to set it up. It's personalized, it's real information. It's about you and your day and your life. It's not scored, it's not right or wrong. You're not going to get points or you're not going to lose points for getting the wrong answer. It's really using grammar just for a communicative purpose. And it involves, if the students are moving around the classroom, movement, which is great for getting students to get their energy levels up, to get them engaged and more communicative and more willing to keep going if they're moving. Movement is very important in the young learner classroom. It's social, talking to their friends, getting a chance to exchange ideas with their peers, very important for these teenagers. And interaction obviously is the main aim of the communicative language classroom, and the sort of thing, again, that teenage students really love, that opportunity to interact with their peers. So it's a very simple, very controlled grammar activity, which is really just an extended drill, but at the same time, it's highly communicative, enjoyable, energizing, personalized, and a winner every time. At the end, of course, you can get feedback. You can ask the students who lives in a semi-detached house, and the person who has a name on their list can put their hand up and say, João lives in a semi-detached house, but Diana doesn't live in a semi-detached house. They can give feedback using affirmatives and negatives, and share the information they just learned about their partners and peers and colleagues. Swapping, on the other hand, is a little more calm, it's a little more static, but there is interaction involved. Swapping is the type of exercise where students are going to have a little more thinking time, but they're also going to be sharing information and working with each other. What happens is that the way I do it, I provide students in pairs or small groups, very often just in pairs, with a series of half sentences, half complete sentences, using the grammar area that we're studying at that moment, of course. Students will work together in their pairs or their small groups to finish these sentences. They don't write the completion of the sentence on that page, very important. They write the other half of the sentence on a different piece of paper in completely random order, at the top, at the bottom, in the middle, up the side, anywhere they like, but not in the same order as the original page that they're completing. Then, when they've written the second half of all the sentences in the random order on their second page, they hand that page to another group or another pair, and the other pair will read what's on the page and try to decide which sentence each of the halves matches to on their original page that you handed them. So they've all got the same first halves, but now they receive a completely new set of second halves with new information. This can be sort of funny or personalized, it can be true or invented, anything they like, but they have to try and decide which second half matches which first half. Once they've done that, they read the completed sentence back to the group that wrote them or to the pair that wrote them, and they'll get feedback from their partner, from the other pair, telling them if that combination is correct or not. When we get to the end, we can read out the funniest ones to the whole class. There's always some nice, inventive and funny and different kind of sentences in there, and everyone can enjoy what came out of that exercise. So let's just have a look at an example. If I'm using the first conditional, this is something I nearly always do, first conditional. Very simple, very controlled first conditional sentences, starting with if or starting with the result clause, you decide. But for example, just two examples there. If it rains this weekend, and I'll be so happy if, and the students working in pairs need to decide a possible second half or completion to each of those sentences, which they'll write, don't forget, in random order on another page. And that might be, if it rains this weekend, I'll be so happy if they're writing, the school explodes in the night, or I'll stay home and watch a film. So if it rains this weekend, the pair will now receive this new page and they'll have to decide, if it rains this weekend, I'll stay home and watch a film. I'll be so happy if the school explodes. Yay! So it's a little bit inventive, a little bit creative, it's a little bit personalized. It's using grammar to communicate real ideas, sometimes a little funny, a little creative. And then they get a chance to check those back with their partners. Lots of interaction, changing the focus, a little bit of movement, handing things around, and coming out with a very concrete set of completed sentences as their tangible outcome at the end. A nice way to practice that language in a very controlled way is just sentence completion. But the interactive part and swapping those sentences and checking it with their partners makes it much more engaging. Movement. We talked about movement just now. Hang on. In my turn for movement, just going to have a little sip of water. So, a classic movement exercise, if you ask me, the classic is Mime. Using Mime to get across linguistic ideas, it's great fun. You always have the whole class laughing and smiling and getting involved. It's something that every student can do. They don't need to be good at speaking to be able to understand a sentence and mime it to the best of their ability. And you'll quite often find that those who perhaps are not as linguistically gifted as the rest of the class, are actually very good at being physical and transmitting those ideas. So everyone can get involved, everyone can get something out of it. The most simple way to do it, of course, is in pairs, where one student will be looking at a sentence on the page or on a piece of paper that you've given them, and it might say something like, now remember this is third cycle, so it's not going to be very simple. It's going to be a complex sentence. I'm watching TV and eating popcorn. They look at that sentence, they decide how they're going to mime it, and they mime that to their partner, who has to then supply them with the sentence that's on their paper. It doesn't have to be exactly right. If they say, I'm watching a program on TV and I'm eating some popcorn, that's fine. You have to make it clear to them that it doesn't have to be every letter perfect in what comes back to them, but they need to produce a sentence that's close enough to what's on the paper just by watching the mime. And then the other student will take a turn, and the other student might have something like, he's taking the rubbish out. They'll have to try and find a way to indicate that it's not I, but he. Point to someone else in the class maybe. He's taking the rubbish out and it's raining. So again, a complex sentence. They're in 7th, 8th year now. They're ready for complex language, and they mime this sentence and their partner will guess. And then of course you'll have a series of sentences like this. It could just be based on an exercise you find in the book. And they will choose a sentence for themselves and mime it, and their partner will guess. But it's good to have an exercise or an opportunity, an activity where the students have a chance to swap roles several times. They're miming and speaking, and then miming and speaking, taking turns. A group mime, now this is much more involving and active and great fun. I love doing this with my students. A group mime is where you will actually invite 4 or 5 people to come to the front of the class at the same time. So 4 or 5 volunteers come to the front of the class. You will show each one a different sentence, or maybe a picture where something is happening with an action. For example, you're watching TV and eating popcorn, or you're taking the rubbish out and it's raining. It's best if there are all you at this stage, and we'll see why in a moment. So each one of the volunteers has a different sentence, or maybe a picture that they can imitate with an action or an activity. And then all of the 4 or 5 students mime at the same time. They have 10 seconds to do their mime for the sentence that you showed them or the picture you showed them. And then at the end of the 10 seconds, you say stop. And they have to freeze in the middle of their action. If they're eating popcorn, they'll be frozen like this. And while they are stopped and frozen, that's when the other students have time or the opportunity then to put their hands in the air and say, Luana's watching TV. And you say, yes, and? Luana's watching TV and eating popcorn. Well done. The other students will be able to make a guess, and either you or the student who's being referred to can confirm or deny the answer, say if it's correct or not. And they can keep on guessing until they've got all the 4 or 5 sentences and correct answers for each of the students involved in the multi-mime. So it's very active. They need to pay very close attention because they've only got 10 seconds to look and watch and understand what 4 or 5 different people are doing. And then there's lots of opportunity to put your hand in the air, join in, give an answer, and then you'll invite new volunteers to come to the front of the class, and you'll show them a new set of sentences. Some of the same ones, why not? Repeat a few, but mix in some different ones, and do the whole thing 3 or 4 times. Not everyone, bear in mind, will want to come to the front of the class and do a mime for everyone. Let's be sensitive to that. When I was a kid, I would definitely not have wanted to. In my teenage years, I was quite happy to sit at the back of the class and go unnoticed. I think we should respect that. Everyone can join in by watching and understanding and contributing an answer. They don't all need to mime for everyone. So that's a great way to get some real energy and laughter and smiles going in the class. A pairs mime or a group mime, lots of activity, lots of action, lots of opportunity to watch and understand and join in and offer answers. And they won't even really notice by this stage that what they're doing is practicing the grammar that they've just done on the page. Because it'll be fully involved and involving with lots of movement, lots of engagement, lots of enjoyment. They'll enjoy it. They'll love it. Now, music, of course, all the way through the Fly High course, you will find great songs by artists the students know and love, a whole variety of different musical styles. This one, of course, is by your man Lucas Graham, or the band headed by Lucas Graham, or is the band called Lucas Graham? Never mind. There we go. It's Lucas Graham. And this song, of course, uses the present simple of these verbs in brackets. Music, as we all know, for many, many reasons, is a great way to really fix language in students' heads. The rhythm, the tune, the repetition, everything really helps to get that language into the students' brains, make it stick there and go around all day or over the next several days. They'll find themselves singing it in the middle of the day, and they won't remember where that song came from, but it's in their heads. So it's a great way to really help students connect with the language and see that people they know and love and respect and admire are using this language in their artistic production. So, of course, what we can do is we can listen to the song and we can do different activities. We can, of course, do gap fills. We can correct the wrong words in the songs. We can order the sentences. Everything we need to make students just pay attention. We need something to help them pay attention, be it a gap or an ordering or something that's wrong, to make them listen and clue in and follow that language. But that's the first stage, to get them familiarized, to get them to notice the grammar as well appearing in the song. Second thing would be, of course, to get them more fully engaged and sing along. I think this is a really important stage, which often gets forgotten, that the best thing to do with a song is sing it. Make sure that you leave time to get all your students singing along, the ones who want to, or just listening and enjoying if they're not the singing type. But give the class the opportunity to, once they've done their initial focus on the language and filled in the gaps, etc., to just enjoy that song, sing along with it, and it's really going to help fix it in their heads if they're producing it as well. And then my final suggestion for the last, and as it says, the next level activity, is dance routine. Now, if we just go back actually and have a look at these lyrics, there are lots of instances in these lyrics where there is something physical the students can do to illustrate what's happening in those lyrics. So, for example, you've got pinch myself, am I scared? You've got to smile, you've got to open up your heart. Lots of ways that you can actually portray these lyrics and transmit these lyrics with physical activity. So you're incorporating mime and music, making a dance routine, not just going open your heart, but make it a sort of a dramatic music video style, open your heart. And make it big and bold and dramatic, and students really love this idea that they can get involved and pretend that they're part of the band doing that dance routine to that song. And the combination of music and repetition and rhythm and mime and routine and doing it as a group really fixes the language. The first song I ever did this with was a song called Over My Shoulder by Mike and the Mechanics, which you might remember. Looking back over my shoulder. And of course we did Looking Back Over My Shoulder. And we had mimes and dance routine to go with every line of the song. And then years and years later, I asked students, the first students I ever did it with, if they still remember the song, and they remembered it absolutely word for word. It's not the sort of song they're going to hear on the radio very often, but it was absolutely engraved in their heads. And the dance routine was a big reason why they remembered it so well. The more ways that you get to fix language, music, mime, engagement, singing, production, all those things, the more opportunities and the more different ways you get to fix that language, the more it will stay and become part of their permanent resource. And of course, we can play games with grammar. Just a couple of exercises or a couple of examples here. We're going to look at how to play Connect 4 and the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style game using grammar. To play Connect 4, you will need a grid on the board. As you can see on the screen here, a grid showing the numbers 1 to 40. Now, you can either pre-prepare this and project it, or if you're old school like me, you'll spend 45 seconds writing up the numbers. You'll draw the grid, a 5 by 8 grid, and you'll write up the numbers. Let's be aware, though, that this is a very good way to lose students' attention. Even just 45 or 50 or 90 seconds writing up numbers on the board, and you can lose the attention of the whole class. We know that well. So get them to tell you what the numbers are. Get them to either join in with you as you're writing the numbers and call them out, and then make them think a little. You're writing up number 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you skip ahead to 8 and say, what's the number here? And they have to go, 8. And then you carry on 9, 10, and then you skip ahead to 24 and say, what's this one? And they have to go, 8, then 16, then 24. Keep them on their toes, keep them clued in, and you'll take another 20 seconds to do this, but it will keep their attention because they're waiting for you to throw another little mathematical challenge at them. So anyway, you've got your numbers on the board, you've got your grid ready to go, and you're going to use the checkpoint pages. At the end of each unit in the Fly High course, you've got the checkpoint, which is a little test, a resume of everything that's gone in that unit, and an opportunity to consolidate and test your knowledge of it. And the way I do it is that I take a photocopy of the pages of the book. You're not supposed to do that, are you? I didn't say that. Photocopies? No. I take a photocopy of the book, and down the side of the page, as we can see here like this, I handwrite. These are not handwritten numbers, but never mind. I handwrite the numbers 1 to 40 next to each of those questions. The checkpoint pages very conveniently have 40 questions, so you can use that grid every time. Then we're back to the grid on the board. You divide your class into 2 groups, and you're going to play the game Connect 4. If you're not familiar with the game Connect 4, it would actually take me a little while to explain it, but the idea is, of course, that you need to make a series of 4 squares connected for your team in your team's color to win a point. And then the game just keeps going until you've made as many series of 4 squares as you can. So you've got your class divided into 2 teams. You decide with a flip of the coin which team goes first, and the first team might choose, for example, number 36. 36, you'll look at your photocopied page of the checkpoint questions. You'll find number 36 and you'll direct the class to look at, for example, exercise 5, number 4. The class or the team look at that question, decide on the correct answer. Of course, the other team are doing it as well, because they realize if the first team gets it wrong, they get the chance to jump in and get that point. And then when they're ready with the answer, they check with each other before someone blurts out an answer and gets it wrong. Check with each other, give the answer. If it's correct, you fill in that square in their color, and they get the first block on the board. Then it's the other team's turn, and they might decide they want to do number 40. You'll look at your page again, find which question on the page corresponds to number 40 in your handwritten numbers. They'll confer, check it with each other, give you the answer. If it's correct, they get their square, and the game carries on. Next, they'll go up in this one. The blue team have decided to go vertically. Number 28, of course, is going to come from a completely different exercise with a different area. That's great. We'll explain why in a moment. The other team are going to go horizontally. Fine, why not? 40, 39. That team is continuing to go up their vertical scale, and then the orange team have just realized, we've got to block them. So they will get their next question, number 12, again from another different exercise. And if they get the correct answer, we'll be able to block that team and stop them getting their 4 in a row. And now the blue team obviously are going to decide they're going to block the other guys from getting their 4 in a row by using number 37, which means they can't do those 4 in a row across the bottom right. But then the orange team might decide to go for 38. Why are they doing that? Strategy. They've realized that they can maybe get a diagonal. You can only put blocks higher up the grid if there's something completed below it. But they've realized that if they build up there, they can get a diagonal and the other team might not notice. It's all about strategy. It's all about thinking. It's all about sharing. It's all about healthy competition. And it works really well for a number of reasons. In terms of the grammar, it works because the students are absolutely focused on getting the right answer. Getting it right becomes incredibly important, incredibly motivating. They're sharing their ideas with their peers. The ones who don't really know are listening and learning from their peers and their teammates. And getting the right answer becomes really, really important. Grammar becomes a means to an end. It's not just filling in gaps. It's filling in gaps and having fun and doing well and trying to win that game. It's a means to an end rather than just a gap on a page. Correction and feedback also becomes vitally important. They will offer their answer to you and you will say yes or no, and they'll have to understand and figure out and realize why that answer is yes or no, is right or wrong, so they can do better in the next ones next to it. It's collaborative. They're sharing information, they're sharing ideas, they're using the joint knowledge of their team. Again, it's another way to interact, be part of their teen peer groups, which is very important to them, and work together. And here's one of the things that I find very interesting about this. You're skipping between different question types, because if they go up a vertical column, and they're doing, for example, number 36, number 28, number 20, and 12 for their 4 in a row, all of those will come from different exercises, practicing different types of questions. This is excellent because repeated research has shown that if you do, on one hand, repeated examples of the same grammar point over and over again, present simple, present simple, present simple, present simple, present simple, present simple, and then another exercise on prepositions, preposition, 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 then the students will have the opportunity to practice and learn and get better. But if you mix everything up and in one question you're focusing on vocabulary and on the next one you're focusing on present simple and on the next one you're focusing on prepositions and then in the next one you're focusing on a form of the verb to have or have got, and everything is getting mixed up all together, then that actually prepares students for success in the real communicative world much better, research has shown over and over again, than if you're doing repetitive practice of the same area. It's called interleaving, mixing things up, making it unpredictable and random what's going to come at them next, and it produces much better competence at the end of the day than repeated practice. And this game is just an ideal way to do it because they'll be choosing numbers all over the board and inevitably mixing up the types of practice. There we go. That's Connect 4. Let's have a quick look at Millionaire, the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game. You can use exactly the same page of questions. You decide which you think are the $5,000 questions, the $50,000 questions. Some of them will be more difficult than others, and you can decide which ones you want to use as the more difficult questions. But basically, you can have the whole class playing this, listening to the questions, or you decide, you tell them the number of the question that comes next. They work together or work on their own and share their ideas with each other to come to the correct answer, offer that answer to the teacher who will decide and tell them if it's correct or not, and they'll move up the board until they get towards the $1 million, until of course they get one wrong, and then they come crashing back down to the bottom again, and they have to start all over again. Of course, with 40 questions, you can start and stop and start and stop several times. You could even have, again, groups playing this against each other in the same class. You have a sort of a competitive version. You decide, do your students work well collaboratively? Do they get along with competition, or do they get too excited? Decide which way you want to do it to suit each different group of students. But again, they'll be very focused on accuracy. Getting that answer right becomes extremely important for them. They'll be collaborating, they'll be interacting, they'll be sharing, and they'll be having fun by moving up that scale or completing the Connect 4 grid and getting on to the winning position. Finally, let's have a look at one more game, a team game this time, running sentences or pass the paper. For this one, you need to get the students into groups. Now, let's do the running version first. This is a loud and lively and active and highly engaging and movement-based version of the game. And what happens is you get two teams of students at the beginning. Each one will have maybe 7 or 8 students, and they line up in 2 lines in front of the board, and the first person in each line gets a board pen. Then you will read out a sentence to them, of course, a sentence practicing the grammar that they have just been doing. You will repeat that sentence slowly and carefully twice, and then when you say go, the teams write the sentence on the board. The first student will run to the board and write just one word. They will then come back to their team, hand the pen to the next person in the team, and they will go to the back of the line. The next person will go to the board and write again one word. Each student writes one word each, and the aim is for the students to write the sentence as quickly as possible, finish before the other team. When the sentences are done on the board, you can, if you want, give points. The points for the team that finished first, the points for the team that got every word spelt correctly, or, as I started to do after a while, I stopped giving points, and we just had it as a little competition to see who could finish first. And the team that finished first went, yay, and we're all happy. And then we moved on to the next one. And there was no real winner or loser. They just enjoyed the excitement at that moment. And no team really felt at the end that they lost. But we did pay very careful attention to the language, and there was feedback. And they will very happily point out the mistakes in the other team's sentences. And so they're, again, very carefully focused on accuracy of the other team this time, not so much their own, but they're paying very close attention to the grammar and making sure it's correct before moving on to the next sentence. You can get, I either have the same team keep going if no other students want to come and join in, or if you have other students who want to be part of it, get new teams up, give them new sentences, keep this going. I would normally do about 5 or 6 sentences before it gets a bit too energetic, a bit too frantic, and then we go and calm down and we sit down and we do something more reflective and quieter. Or there is another version of this, as it says at the top of the page. There's the pass the paper version. Pass the paper is the same game, but instead of having the students run to the board and write on the whiteboard, students will work in groups. Each group will have a piece of paper and a pen, and the first student in each group, you'll have to decide who is first, will write one word, and then they'll pass the paper and the pen to the next student, who will write the next word. Paper and pen, pass to the next student, write the next word, pass again, write the next word, and as soon as they've finished, they hold up their paper and say, finished, and you can go over and check, and if it's not correct, you can just say, no, and they have to go back and find what's wrong and correct it before the other team finish. So there's a little bit of competition going on again, but again, I used to use a point system for this and see who was the winner at the end. We don't anymore. We just use the excitement of trying to finish before the other team and the enjoyment of going, yeah, we did it. And then at the end, there's no losers, there's no winners. We're just enjoying the excitement of the game. So you can have the full energetic version of running to the board and writing on the board, one student, one word each, or you can have the seated version where they're passing a paper and a pen around their group and holding up the paper when they've finished their sentence. You decide which level of energy you want, but try the running version. It's great fun. Students love it. So there we go. Lots of ways that we can get students moving towards this new mindset. As we said, they do need their quiet time for focus, to build their confidence, to realize that they're ready to move forward and use that grammar for interaction, the interaction with meaning and purpose and outcome and sharing and personalization. They're having fun because, of course, they're talking to their friends and they're interacting in their teen adolescent groups, which is very important for them. They're being creative and a bit funny and a bit different and inventive. And they're exchanging and learning about each other, which is really important. So all of these things coming together: quiet time to get that confidence, interaction to get that engagement going, fun to put that smile on the face, and at the end of that, the dopamine and the chemicals being produced in their brain will be telling them, I want more of this. That's the idea. The type of exercises that students will feel they've already learned something, achieved something, and enjoyed, and that will have them looking forward to doing something similar the next time they have a grammar point come round. And they won't be saying, boo, boring, tests, don't like it. They'll be going, I love grammar. Well, they might not say, I love grammar, but when the grammar comes around again, something in their heads will tell them, this is going to be good. They're going to enjoy it. And I hope you will too. Try some of these ideas out and move your students into this mindset of grammar is fun. Thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.